Very good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen, and good evening to any viewers online. I'm Councillor Ian Edwards, and it's my privilege to chair the Central and South Planning Committee this evening. A couple of quick announcements. Fire alarms, one isn't expected, so if it does sound, it will be genuine. We will be evacuating. Fire exits are the way you came in and all the way back out to the main entrance. There is an alternative at the back here behind the screen, should that be blocked for any reason. Don't panic though. We are all very familiar with the building, and we will assist you outside. We will assemble on the forecourt of the Civic Centre. Mobile telephones, could I please remind everybody to have their telephones turned off or at least to silent. Feedback forms. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the public, there are feedback forms on the chairs. We do encourage you to complete those, and those watching online, you can also complete an online form. It does help us improve the running of our meetings. Okay, I will talk a little bit in a minute about how the meeting is going to be run. We'll probably dance through some bits of the agenda as well. Before I do that, though, there's a number of faces in the room, and you may be wondering who they are and what they do. First of all, I need to remind you, we are being filmed. The camera is up above us, that little dome. It's facing this way, so members of the public sat in the gallery, you're not on film. Only when you come forward to the table, and the sound is very sensitive to the microphone, and unless the microphone's on, it won't pick anything up. So colleagues, let's not forget the red light. Sitting around us, the councillors that will be making the decisions this evening. Councillor Brian Stead on my far right-hand side, Councillor Shariah Ahmed Boulana, Councillor Alan Chapman, Councillor David Yarrow. On my far left-hand side, Councillor Janet Duncan, Councillor Majid Katra, and Councillor Jazz Dillon. We're assisted in our decision-making by Nicole Cameron, Legal Advisor. John Pitt, who's the Democratic Services and Clerk in the meeting, could keep me in line. James Rogers, our Head of Planning. Planning expert, gives us advice. Meghni Harani will be presenting the applications and telling us what's happening. And Syed Shah is our Transport Advisor on road and parking issues. Okay, so that's the team. As I say, the councillors are the decision makers. They vote, and I as chair only vote should there be, in the unlikely event that there's a tie. This is not a public meeting, it's a meeting held in public. That's not a cute play on words. It actually does mean something. Public meetings, anybody can get up and say what they like. This is a meeting held in public, and the speaking is therefore constrained by the council's constitution. The only people allowed to speak, address the committee, are those that have presented a petition, and the agent or applicant, agent or respondent in reply to that petition. I'll go into the speaking a little bit in a moment. Let's kick off and get marched through some of the formalities. Apologies for absence, please.
No apologies received, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest matters coming before the committee this evening. Any issues? No. Thank you. To sign and... Oh, sorry. Councillor Stead. We do. You are absolutely right. Thank you very much. Sorry, you don't... Councillor Roy Chamdal. Thank you very much, Councillor Stead, for reminding me of that. No. Councillor Roy Chamdal is delayed at the last moment. Thank you. Sign and receive the minutes of the previous meeting held on the previous meetings held on the 19th of April. Okay. Thank you very much. And on the 12th of May. Okay. Matters that have been notified in advance or urgent. There is one late item that I've taken. That is in part 2, which is an enforcement matter. The meeting's held in 2 parts. Part 1 is the public discussion of the planning applications. That's to which will be streamed online, and members of the public are entitled to come and listen, and if they have a petition, to contribute. Part 2 concern private matters of enforcement, and because these matters could end up before the court, we don't have open discussion of matters of evidence, and therefore it's held in private. There will be a break between part 1 and part 2 of the meeting. The only late item is in part 2, and therefore has no real impact on the meeting. If anybody is interested in the part 2 issues, they are on the agenda, and the decisions are also published, but not the discussion. Okay. We are now moving into the actual business part of the meeting, and we will be kicking off with number 6, Abingdon Close, please, Mr. Ronnie.
Thank you, Chairman. 6 Abingdon Close is a 2-storey detached property situated on the north side of the road. This application is for a single-storey rear extension and a single-storey and first-floor front extension. The application is the subject of 2 letters and a petition, and the grounds of objection are set out on page 16 of the agenda. There is no objection to the single-storey rear extension element of the proposal, as this complies with the Council's normal requirements. The main issue, therefore, is the impact of the front extensions on the character of the property and its visual impact on the street scene and the wider area. The Council's supplementary planning document on residential extensions states, and I quote, "Changes and extensions to the front of the house must be minor and not alter the overall appearance of the house or dominate the character of the street. Front extensions that extend across the entire frontage will normally be refused." A large number of the properties in Abingdon Close are characterised by single-storey front projections, which originally formed the garage for the property. A number of these front projections, including the application site and the adjoining property, have a balcony above, which forms an unusual but original feature of the properties. The loss of the balcony feature, the addition of a first floor above, and the squaring off of the ground floor at the front would represent a significant change to the design and appearance of the dwelling. It's considered that these changes to the most visually prominent parts of the property would be detrimental to the architectural composition of the property, its character and appearance, and would not be in keeping with the prevailing appearance of dwellings within Abingdon Close. The proposal is therefore considered unacceptable, and the application is recommended for refusal on that basis. If I can just go through the plans. That shows the extent of the area of special local character, the purple area, so it's right on the boundary but not within. And this is the existing and proposed plan, so I can just point out on the existing plan, if I can find my red dot, these front projections that you've got on the ground floor here are a sort of feature of the properties along Abingdon Close, and some of them have a balcony feature above, and what the proposal is doing is building above that and squaring off the property here, so with a single-storey element, so it has a square frontage in essence, and so the first floor element is this part here, and then the single-storey element here. And it should be more apparent once you get to the photographs, I think. So yeah, so above that you have a first floor element and then a single-storey element infilling this space here. And you can see that a large proportion of the properties on Abingdon Close have these front projections. Some have been converted into habitable rooms. They were originally garages for the properties, and quite a few of them have this balcony feature above. Some have just the front projection without the balcony, but the front projections are a characteristic feature, and their loss is something that we're saying is unacceptable. There was an omission from the report in that we did say in the report that we would comment on the trees and then didn't. There are no protected trees that are affected by the development. The main tree that's part of the protection is this large tree here, just out of picture, and it's quite a distance from the front work, so it's not affected, and there are not any protected trees in the back which will be affected. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We have this is the petition item. Is a Mr. or Mrs. Upal here? Thank you, Mr. And you wish to speak? I'll give you some guidance if you do. Okay. We're allowed 5 minutes to talk to us. Okay, and that is timed here. You will see 4 minutes of green light, 1 minute of amber light, and the red, I will bring you to a halt, okay? We will start the timing when you toggle on the microphone in front of you. You can just turn that to face you a little bit, and you'll see a single button at the front. When you press that, the red light will come on, and that means that you will be live. You then start your 5 minutes, okay? So at your own convenience. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, councillors, you saw on the screen, my house is the one on the left, and really I'm here to represent all the people who signed the petition, which are all people who actually live on that close. We're a double cul-de-sac, so there's no through traffic. It's a very quiet, peaceful close where all of the houses are in harmony. The proposal for us is ill-considered, and it doesn't keep in harmony, especially on two key points. I think the planning officer has summarised all our feelings very, very well. So we stand by them with very strong feelings that policy number B1, B13, B15, B19, we wholeheartedly agree. And secondly, we just don't want a precedent to be set that the building line can be changed, because then where do you stop? So there's nothing else I can really add to what the planning officer has put in there, apart from the strength of feeling of the residents who all put pen to paper to say that they strongly object to this.
Thank you very much. That's quite clear. Yep. Just invite you to turn the microphone off for a second. Okay, colleagues, are there any questions at all we wish to make? Petitioner? No, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Opal. You could return to the seat. Thank you. The applicant, Afon Lian, my apologies for the pronunciation, or the agent, Mr. Parfitt. You're the applicant. And you now have the same 5 minutes, okay? 4 minutes will be in the green, 1 minute with the amber, and then... Okay. As I say, the timing will start when you press the microphone. The light will come on, and that will be the start of your time. You'll have 5 minutes, okay?
Dear Chairman, dear committee, thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. I'm sorry, I'm a bit nervous because this is my home, and this is something we've been applying for sometimes, and we put in enormous of money into this one. If you don't mind, I will just go through the points. I will try not. I will not to try to answer all the objections raised by the objectors tonight, and their written representations as they have been addressed in the planning officers, or some of it irrelevant. And instead, I will try to address the reason for the refusal and set out the officer's report. I understand those reasons to be: number one, reduction in the rear garden to 90 square meter, which is 10 square meters less than the 100% policy. And the second is the change in the character composition of the existing house by the proposed front extension. In the report, the planning officer has acknowledged that the small shortfall, the garden area, is not good enough for reason for the refusal of the application. However, we are prepared to omit the rear extension. We understand to reduce the overall bulk of the proposal, the proposed extension. The substantive reason for recommending refusal, therefore, the changes of the front house, resulting in the front losing of the balcony feature and the small single-story extension to the side of, resulting in the projection as the planning team manager discussed. We accept that the front extension of allowed will result in changes in the character of the front house. However, I would like to suggest that would change for a better. They will have any detrimental effect on the neighbor property or street. The balcony at the front of the house is badly designed and rarely used. In addition, it is a flat roof with a bad temper and it leaked many times. What we are proposing is something make it a better and look much better for the scene on the street. And this is being allowed for house number 1, abandoned close at the entrance, and house number 55 as highlighted by Mr. Herrera. Therefore, we are trying to improve the scene. In addition, the single story in that one we proposed as improvement. We put it in a V shape, in a better shape to improve. The scene of the property changed already because we already have shown before to you. We already carry out an extension under the permitted plan permission, and we had a dormer. So we are trying now to improve, and this is exactly happened in number 55. And here, do you mind if I get, please? Yes, please. Yes, and this is also done for the other in the house in the back. So, in conclusion, I would like to say what I'm trying to do. Please consider this one. Okay.
We get the thrust of your comments.
Yes.
If you would just allow us a couple of seconds, please,
sure,
for us to pass the photographs around.
Do you want me to?
If you have other copies,
yes.
That would be helpful. They come around the other way.
I didn't know that the whole Hillingdon was here.
Through there, please.
Yes, sir.
Be very careful.
I didn't know that Hillingdon was here.
We've been provided a number of photographs. We will have the opportunity to see them all. Have you seen this pack? You need to see this pack to keep a set for record, please. We'll have the opportunity to... No, that's okay. Okay, before the applicant leaves, any questions at all, clarification, having seen the photographs? No? No issues? Thank you very much, sir. Could I ask you please to turn off the microphone and then return back to the seats? Thank you very much. Okay. Colleagues, we've heard from the petitioner concerning the adverse impact that this development is said to have on the nature of the street, and that is echoed in the officer's report and is the substantive reason for refusal. And we've heard from the applicant that there is precedent in the street for this sort of development, and we've seen photographs of two such properties, number 1 and number 55. I invite Mr. Roger or Mr. Hirani to comment on those two, please. Thank you.
I mean, obviously, different parts of the roads in this area have different individual characters, and so numbers 2 to 8 are quite similar properties. They have most of them have the balcony features, and that was the street scene photo that was being shown. Numbers 1 to 55 are corner plots that have slightly different orientations. Number 55 actually fronts onto, number 55 Court Drive obviously fronts onto Court Drive. So it's got a completely different aspect from the application site. So the concerns we were raising were effectively in the context of that measure part of Abingdon Close. And so I wouldn't put so much more weighting on these two examples that are shown. The other point I would say is that there are criticisms I could make from an architectural perspective of the extensions of number 1 Abingdon Close and number 55 Court Drive, and I wouldn't actually wish those to be cited as precedents of good architecture. So I think I'd be saying both of those 2 points to the planning committees. In effect, there isn't anything the petitioner has raised that, in my view, would alter the recommendation to the planning committee on this item.
Thank you. So number 1 is the only one property in the street, and that is not immediately adjacent to the others. 55 is in a totally separate road and therefore really shouldn't impact on the decision making here. Okay, I'll throw this open to colleagues for comment or discussion. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I thank the petitioners and also the applicant for coming along to help us with further information.
Councillor Duncan, can I intervene? I do apologise. It's just been drawn to my attention. I need to read into record comments from a ward councillor, and I've overlooked that. And I will do that, if I may. This is a comment from Councillor Graham, who's unable to attend, but has asked that the following be read into the committee. Councillor Graham says, I am familiar with the location and support the petitioners. That being so, I am in agreement with the decision to refuse this application, especially with regard to the proposed front extension by reason of their position, size, scale and design, which would be detrimental to the architectural style of the existing house. The loss of the balcony feature would be regrettable given that any changes to the street scene ought to set out to blend in with and complement the character of the area. That is the submission. My apologies for interrupting you. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you very much, Chair. My concern on this is I do agree with the officer's recommendation, but I'm just concerned about this roof that is proposed at the front, because I'm wondering if these reasons for refusal, I know it does talk about design and it does talk about incongruity, but the actual roof here is set into the existing roof but then comes back so that there's, just this lesser bit at the first floor level, which I think is going to look very awkward as well. I mean, I'm sure officers have considered that, but yes, the loss of the balcony, of course, is a prime design feature, but the roof, the resultant roof that arises from that is in itself something that perhaps needs comment. So I would just ask if officers are happy with that. Is it sufficiently strong on that point? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your attention to detail there. Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that in terms of the roof design itself, it does follow the angles of the existing roof, and generally on two-storey extensions we say that it should be a subsidiary to the main roof, which it follows. So the roof design in itself we wouldn't say is a reason for refusal, but it's the overall design and scale of the development.
I know what you're saying. It's fine.
No, I think we understand. We're talking about the angle of the pitch of the first floor extension. Whilst on the left-hand side it matches the pitch of the roof, on the right-hand side it doesn't match anything. It's at a different angle, and therefore is incongruous. That is the observation here. Okay. Other colleagues, any comments? Nothing.
Again, just to echo Councillor Duncan and everybody else's comments, I also feel that the bulk in this incongruous, and I would support the officer's recommendations. There's not a lot to really discuss on that, I think.
Thank you. It's whether or not the wording here for the refusal is sufficient, capturing the concerns there of Councillor Duncan. Front extension, size, scale, bulk, and design, incongruous. I think it covers it, does it not? Legal?
Having read the refusal reason, I'm pretty confident that the problems that you're picking up here could be put forward at an appeal if that was to become an appeal. So I think it's covered. I think we're covered. But I do understand your concerns, and they are. Absolutely, and I think this gives that to you because it's very wide.
Thank you. We will minute that as an additional argument that's supporting this reason for refusal. Okay, anybody help me taking this forward then, please? Councillor Stead? No. Well, let's have somebody formally propose it.
In a straightforward way, then, I propose we go with the officer's recommendations.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Show of hands, please. That application is refused. Thank you very much. Turn now, please, to agenda item 7, number 14, Moorfield Road, Cowley.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will recall this application. It was deferred at the meeting of the 18th of April for a site visit, and members undertook the site visit earlier this week. Just to remind members, I'll go through the plans again. It's a first floor rear extension that's being proposed. All other works are either authorised or permitted development on this property. So, in essence, members saw at the site visit the existence of these two elements and first floor extensions above. What members are considering is this extension here. And if I go again to the photographs, it's the front of the property, and to the rear, that's the adjoining property and the one on the other side, and the extension is going above this element. But it's not as deep as that. That's 5.5 metres deep, and the extension is 3.6 above that, so it's approximately 2 metres less than the depth of that extension, although it obviously rises up to the eaves height and then has a subsidiary roof. It is recommended for approval, and members saw the site and the adjoining sites on Tuesday, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a very useful site visit, which the great majority of us attended, and I'm very grateful to you for giving up your time to do that. Colleagues, discussion. Councillor Dillon.
It was beneficial to see because those pictures actually kind of put a different perspective. The rear of the extension doesn't look as big when you see it in its entirety in real life. It doesn't look as big, whereas the front looks massive. But that's already been approved, etc. I can't I know we talked about it and we don't like it, etc., but within the planning laws, I can't see any reason why we would want to, or why we could refuse it. It's not protruding much further than the property on the right, and although on the other side of the street it's a little bit different, there are no real reasons why I feel no planning reasons why we couldn't refuse it.
Thank you for that comment. Councillor Yarrow.
Thank you, Chairman. I quite agree with what Councillor Dillon has said, and having seen it and been on the site visit, I have no problems with this one at all. I think we thought we might have had problems at the last meeting, but having seen it in the flesh, and having approved the main building at the front, and this is extensions at the back which can't be seen from the road, I've got absolutely no problems, and I would like to recommend that we accept the officer's recommendations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lynn, seconded.
Could I just, if Meg could let us know on the garage?
It was approved under a previous application. There was a condition which restricts its use to a garage, so it is an enforceable condition. We are repeating that condition on this application as well, so we would be able to enforce its use as a garage.
Thank you very much. I did find that the visit very useful, and whilst I understand the concerns of residents, there was no prevailing character to the rear of the property such that I could find any detriment and harm being caused. And in fact, there might be some benefit from the reduction of that very tall gable end on the first floor. It's all been said, it's been proposed and seconded, so a show of hands please on this one. Thank you very much, that's unanimous. Okay, agenda item 8 please. Simpson Road, Holloway Lane, Harmsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Members may recall a few years back now an application for this site for its use as a yard for the works to Hammersmith Flyover, and it's been back for renewal because the works have overrun, as it were. This is another renewal, and hopefully this will be the final one because the works have been completed. They're just making sure that all the works are fine and testing is taking place, after which the mock-up that's been carried out on this site will be dismantled and hopefully it will return back to its greenbelt status. There are photographs of the site as you see it there on the aerial, and it's not particularly noticeable from the highway and the surrounding roads, so some artistic photographs, I have to say. Of the sunset. But as you can see, it is a yard, but it's not particularly noticeable from the surrounding areas, and it will be dismantled hopefully by the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is an important strategic infrastructure use, and it is only for another limited period, with a high confidence that this is going to be the final bit. Councillor Dillon.
I drive past it every day, and to be honest, I've never seen it.
Thank you very much, and that's a recommendation.
I have no problem in approving.
So you're proposing?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Carteret. Show of hands, please. That's everybody. Thank you. Agenda item 9. 26 Burley Road, Hillingdon.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for an outbuilding and said to be used as a games room. If I can again go straight to the plans, it is fairly reasonable size. It's 30 square metres in exterior measurements, and there are no facilities that are shown within the building, no shower rooms, no bathrooms, no sinks of that nature, so we're saying that in this case it's acceptable. In relation to the condition relating to its use and restricting its use, your officers have reconsidered this and feel that it's probably overly restrictive, and we would normally say that they could be used as a study possibly as a living room. So take out the words living room and study from condition 6, and restrict its use as a kitchen, bathroom, or as a separate unit of accommodation. With that, it's recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, go to the
Councillor Duncan.
Move officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Yarrow. Show of hands, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 10. The Loftus, please, Mr. Harani.
Thank you, Chairman. This is relating to a two-storey semi-detached property on the south side of the road, and the proposal is for a part two-storey, part single-storey side and rear extension, and its conversion to two-bed self-contained flats. In terms of the overall conversion, the size of the property prior to conversion with the extensions, it complies with the 120 square requirement. The issues are in relation to the access to the amenity space and the parking provision. And again, if I can go straight to the plans, it's a restricted area here, and we're not sure that they will be able to get into those two spaces, and so the reason is set out as not having demonstrated. If they can demonstrate with tracking diagrams that those two spaces are accessible, or that minor alterations will make them accessible, then that reason could be overcome. The second reason relates to the amenity space, and obviously the ground floor has access to the amenity space. This is the amenity space for the first floor flat. Unfortunately, there is no way into it for the first floor occupants of the first floor other than through the ground floor flat. So we're saying that it's an unusable space in relation to the first floor flat. So for those two reasons, and the location of the bin stores making it a most prominent feature in the street, we're saying that it's unacceptable. As I say, the reasons may well be overcome by providing access to the rear and by demonstrating that the parking works and relocating the bin stores.
Thank you very much. Do I have comments on room sizes?
Yeah. Sorry. The national space standards were adopted in March 2015. They set out a whole range of requirements, including the overall size of flats and the size of rooms. The overall size of the flats in relation to this is acceptable, but one of the rooms on the ground floor bedroom should be 2.75 metres wide, and it's 2.4, so it is short. Our view is that a shortfall of that nature is unlikely to be supported at appeal, and therefore we haven't put it as a reason for refusal. But I would say that these are brand new space standards, and members may wish to discuss whether they feel that these standards should be applied strictly in the first instance.
Thank you very much, colleagues. On that matter, they are new standards. They've been adopted by the London Plan, and I don't feel comfortable in setting them aside. We have no court decisions, no appeal decisions, and I believe our responsibility, being plan-led, is to uphold the plans and not disregard them, and therefore I believe this should be included as an additional refusal reason. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. 2.4 metres is the width of a parking space. If we're saying that that's an acceptable size for a habitable room, I, for one, don't believe that. So I would like us to uphold the higher standard.
Thank you very much.
If members were to have that as a refusal matter, my preference would be to include it as an overall amenity space issue in refusal reason 1, rather than have it as a standalone issue because of our concern. But I'll just leave that to members.
Fine, thank you. I don't get any indication or body language suggesting we should be overturning the officer's decision. So on the suggestion here that we have delegated authority, the head of planning, to include in here the room size within condition reason 1, include wording that covers that. That suffices for me. I don't believe in this instance it needs to be.
So the reworded refusal reason would effectively say that the amenity space, both externally and internally, is unacceptable, whereas as it currently reads, we're only saying the external amenity space is unacceptable.
That's fine. Let me tell.
It's not amenity space, is it? It's living space.
Yeah, I mean, we could word it so that it's amenity space and living space.
I don't want this to be regarded as a corridor, because 2.4, it is a corridor, really, isn't it? We're talking about somebody having to live in this room.
So we would refer in the reason for refusal, we would refer specifically to room size.
Thank you. And that it's habitable rooms we're talking about.
Excellent.
Thank you.
With inclusion in this reason for refusal then of habitable room size. They're the words we need. That makes it very clear. Okay. Can anybody help me take this forward then, please? Councillor Dillon.
With those amendments, move officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Seconded, please. Councillor Chapman. Show of hands, please. Everybody. Thank you. Sir, madam at the back, it's been rude of me. I should have asked if you're here for any particular reason, because we can adjust our running orders so that you're not required to wait right to the very end, if necessary. Well, there you go. That will just cause the officers a tiny little hiccup while they adjust the presentation, but we will move to agenda item 12, 3A Harvey Road.
Thank you, Chairman. Members may recall this site. It has been to committee on a number of occasions, and again, if I go straight to the photographs and the plans, members will recall that an application was refused for the retention of that side dormer and that rear dormer, and there have been previous applications. The current application now proposes to remove the side dormer and to put a smaller rear dormer into the hipped roof, and your officers consider that in this particular case that's an acceptable amendment and recommending approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dillon.
Yes, I remember this well. It's much better than move officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Yarrow. Show of hands, please. That's approved. I'm sorry, that was very, very quick, and we could have done that a couple of items. I've never heard it called that before, but thank you. Best wishes. Thank you very much. Okay, we turn to agenda item 11, please.
I hope you don't mind if I sort of jump in at this particular point.
Please do, thank you.
What we've done through the addendum is to clarify the internal floor areas. Members will note there is one flat that does have a slight shortfall. This does go back to the new standards that were referred to in an earlier committee item. As such, I'd like to alter my recommendation to add a third reason of refusal to address that would, if members are happy to delegate it in the wording to me, that would capture that shortfall of 2 square metres where we have a flat one that isn't in compliance. I'd like delegated authority if that is an extra third reason, Chairman.
Thank you. I'd be comfortable with that if you could include also, I believe the double bedroom of the garden flat is less than the minimum standard in size, and therefore we're back to the previous issue.
If I can comment again, Chairman, I'd be quite happy to do a complete audit of all the internal space standards. As outlined in the addendum, we already know that one of the flats has a slight shortfall, and if you're happy to delegate that to me, I'd like to alter my recommendation and have a third reason that addresses all shortcomings in internal floor areas.
Fine, thank you. As long as we're specifically looking at the size of each individual room and making sure they each clear the minimum threshold, then I'm comfortable with that. I would be comfortable with that. Colleagues, I put that open to you now. So Dylan, thank you.
I think, is there the opportunity for a crossover there, or just a
Thank you.
So that was my question, and now I'll follow it up with a move officer's recommendation.
Councillor Stead?
I second that proposal, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, so this is with the additional refusal reason, delegated authority to the head of planning concerning the size of the flats and the internal sizes of the habitable rooms as reason for refusal. Okay, show of hands, please, on that one. That's everybody. Thank you very much. Right, agenda item 13. Number 10, West Common Road, Uxbridge. Mr. Ronnie, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This is 2 separate elements, one front dormer and the enlargement of a rear dormer. Again, it's probably easier if I go straight to the plans and photographs. It's a fairly modern property, 1960s, I would say. It already has a rear dormer, and that's the existing plans. And the proposal is to enlarge that and to put a dormer in the cap slide roof in this area here. So that's the proposed. The enlargement of the dormer is acceptable. It's well within the proportions of the roof, so we're saying that's acceptable, although it doesn't meet all the requirements in terms of set downs and set ups from the roof. It is a small dormer in proportion to the roof, and the front dormer again would only allow front dormers if we thought they were part of the character of the road. And if I go to the photographs, these are the rear of the adjoining properties. This is the actual property itself, and that's the dormer which is being enlarged. And if I go to the properties in the road, there are examples of others. This is very similar to what's being proposed on the application property, although slightly different in design. The application property is gable ends and so on. Again, another one. This is very similar. This is probably worse, and the one next door is even worse. So, so we're saying that there are examples of front alterations, shall we say, in the street, and that's probably an original design, but again in the cat slide. So we're saying that it's part of the character of the road, if you like, and for that reason we're accepting the front dormer as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Wish to come in?
A particular question.
There was an issue for me about the step up and step down of the dormer. In the past discussions, we talked about minimum standards, technical standards, and how they might differ from our design guidance.
There's a difference because those earlier guidance quote specific numerical figures that should be complied with. The dormer design guidance is all about having subordinate dormers, and one of the key characteristics is that they're set in from the sides, so you don't have an adverse impact on the street scene. And because this is a particularly this is a quite wide property. It's wider than the example used in the HDAS guidance. So although the kind of height and depth of the dormer increases, it's substantially inset from the side eaves of the property. So it is completely within the spirit of the HDAS, which is obviously guidance. And as I say, it is quite different from the space standards we were applying earlier, where there's extensive text that justifies why you have to apply very explicit numerical standards.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to clarify that in case other people were watching us, of why we're applying one standard and one guidance and how they vary. Councillor Dillon.
James, you used the phrase architectural merits before, and that's obviously open to interpretation. For me, the architectural merit of a dormer like that, as opposed to one along, would be, you'd prefer to have one along and fit that roof space a little bit better. It wouldn't look as, that looks pretty incongruous to me as it is, but if you're going to extend it and make it bigger, it would look less incongruous if it was wider that way than that way. Does that open up the argument for architectural merit?
I think obviously officers have looked at the whole street scene in dealing with both the front and rear dormer. In context of this scene, of this street scene, I have to say we are completely comfortable with the front and rear dormers applied for on this application. This isn't one of those cases where there's any on balance. We are quite comfortable with the front and rear dormers. That's our position as officers.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy with the front dormer. I feel that that's, okay and similar to others in the area. I'm just a bit concerned because although it's a Juliet balcony, there is the equivalent of sort of a floor-to-ceiling door from these plans, which opens and would allow people to just sit out and look over gardens, particularly as this land is higher than the other land to the rear, which drops down. So from that, you have the opportunity to overlook into some of those gardens, don't you? Because of the gradient.
Yeah, if I can just make another important point. So no matter what size and scale the front dormer is, it's always going to require planning permission. Obviously, you can do rear dormers under permitted development rights. So there is a counter-argument. No, you can include Juliets. On a lot of the permitted development rear dormers we have Juliet balconies. Perhaps, I don't know if you want to comment in more detail about the rear dormer.
The GDO specifically says that it must have a platform to be taken as a balcony, and we did refuse them when it were originally in 2008 when Juliet balconies were proposed. We said that they were balconies and therefore they didn't comply with the GDO. We had appeal decisions which said that they did comply because they weren't providing a platform to sit out on. They were part of the room, as it were. So we have had appeal decisions which say that Juliet balconies are a permitted development. And I don't know whether we've had any court cases, but the issue, again, in terms of the overlooking to the rear, the distance is well over 21 metres. In fact, it's almost double the 21 metres that is required for overlooking. So even if they could, they would be looking at about 40 metres to the rear.
Councillor, could you just help me on the sitting out bit? I can't quite interpret the plans in that way.
It's just that with the Juliet balcony, you've got the doors going down here completely, so you've then got an area where somebody can sit there on a nice day, or if they're not well or whatever and they're recovering, they can sit there, and it's the equivalent of sitting, isn't it, on a level where you're looking out onto private gardens. I mean, I didn't know there'd been a legal judgment. If there's been a legal judgment, then we have to accept that, and I accept that. We have to, suffer that. Perhaps there would be more of a case if it was less than 21 metres away or something like that. But I accept if there's been a legal judgment on this matter, I think it's ill-advised. Whoever made that judgment, I disagree with it, but that's a whole other issue. Because I don't think they've thought far enough ahead to the implications of that in more dense development. It's fine in rural areas, but, here not quite so much. But that's it. We have to accept it.
Okay, colleagues, any other issues at all? Councillor Yarrow.
Well, I mean, can I just sort of kick this one off? Obviously, it's in my ward. There are other houses that have got very similar additions to the property. There's a very active North Uxbridge Resident Association, and they have found nothing wrong with this, but rest assured my phone will be ringing if they thought there was anything that they wanted to be said about this not fitting the bill. So quite frankly, I'd like to just propose that we get on with it and we accept the officer's recommendation. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this, and it should go through.
Thank you very much. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Stead, thank you very much. Show of hands, please. That's everybody. Thank you very much. Application approved. Right. Agenda item 14, number 24 Gordon Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application again for two-storey and part single-storey side and rear extensions and their conversion to 2 by 3 bed flats this time. The extensions that are proposed have been previously approved. If members look at the site history section, they'll note that an application was approved earlier this year for those extensions. They are exactly the same as that approval. So in essence, this is an application for the conversion of the larger property, and this does meet all the size requirements. And again, sorry, if I go to the plans, there are parking spaces proposed which are accessible and usable. So we're saying that in this instance, so this is the existing property, and then the extended property, the two-storey side extension is set back from the front 1 metre, set in from the boundary, and it complies with the 45 degrees. The room sizes all comply, the flat sizes all comply, and that's the parking provision which is shown as being independently accessible. So it all meets our requirements, and we're saying that it's acceptable in this instance. So for those reasons, we are recommending approval. There is an amendment in the addendum sheet, and it's to section 7.12, referring to the part M of the building regulations, and the Mayor of London has recently updated his housing supplementary planning guidance, and it came out as adopted in March of this year, and what he says in that is that the part M of the building regulations applies to new build and does not apply to conversion. So condition 7 is recommended to be deleted in this case. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. On this issue, I'm very familiar with Gordon Road and the parking problems down there, and by increasing the number of dwellings, I know that it will exacerbate parking adjacent to a school. Mr. Roger, is there anything at all we can do to limit that impact, potential impact on street parking? Can we, for example, condition no residence parking permit?
No. I mean, the first point I'd say is that this scheme, there's an existing crossover and parking, it meets our standards. So if you're looking at parking permits, there's normally a scenario where the development isn't complying with our parking standards. There is also currently a big issue with whether councils can actually, there's various case law that cast a doubt over whether local planning authorities can actually insist through either planning conditions or legal agreements that particular people are not allowed to have parking permits. So in essence, because this is a larger property, it's a larger plot, there are differences between this and other applications that you've seen for subdivisions come before committee tonight, and in your officer's view, not only are there not any reasons to refuse this, but also if we were to go back to the actual layout of the site, this is an experienced agent who knows how to design schemes such that there are refuse areas in the right places. There is a separate access to each rear garden area so that you don't have to go through a different flat. It has all been laid out in an appropriate way. So there really isn't any reason we could find to criticise or even refuse this particular scheme.
Councillor Ahmed-Wallana.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand it is recommended for approval. Gordon Road is very narrow and congested road, and we always have parking problems in that road, and that is sent to the reps from primary school as well, where people do pick and drop for 500 kids in the morning and in the afternoon. So because I have witnessed this problem for myself in the morning and in the afternoon, I would certainly agree with the rep from school on their objections. That is my concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or observations? Okay, somebody help me here, please, sir. Nobody's taking.
Yes, no, I'll just
Thank you very much, Councillor Duncan. Seconder? Councillor Carter, thank you. Show of hands, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we're moving into part 2. If you can break the link, please.